call to order the February 27th, 2025 Committee of the Whole Board meeting. I am just going to start with a quick announcement that I cannot hear really anything right now, and I don't know if I'm yelling at you or whispering. So if at any point in this meeting I am not following the cues of knowing when people are done talking, Dr. Rhodes is going to help me facilitate moving the meeting along. So if I'm blankly nodding and smiling, just know I'm trying. Posting of the Open Meetings Act. The Nebraska Open Meetings Act legislates the methods by which public meetings are conducted. Information pertaining to this act is posted up by Sheila, if anybody would like to read over that. All right. North Platte Public Schools is a destination school district and community that embraces innovative opportunities and distinguished programs to create highly competitive advantages for all students, instilling the canteen spirit in an evolving world. The canteen spirit embodies generosity, selflessness, and unwavering support through service, pride, collaboration, and grit. Sheila, can we take roll call?
Justin Thompson.
Present.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Present.
Emily Garrick.
Present.
Cindy O'Connor.
Present.
Skip Altic.
Present.
Angela Blazy.
Present.
All right. I would now entertain a motion to approve the publication of the February 27th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Make a motion to approve the publication for the February 27th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Second.
Roll call, Sheila.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Aye.
Emily Garrick.
Aye.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Altic.
Aye.
Angela Blazy.
Aye.
Justin Thompson.
Aye.
All right, and I would now entertain a motion to approve the agenda of the February 27th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for February 27th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Emily Garrick.
Aye.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Altic.
Aye.
Angela Blazy.
Aye.
Justin Thompson.
Aye.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Aye.
All right, we will all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The pledge.
I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on the agenda tonight is our board engagement section. So this section will just open it up to any board members who may have gone on school visits, attended trainings, meetings within the district, anything like that that they would like to share about.
Yeah, I do. I visited Washington School on Tuesday. I was given a tour of the building by two of the ambassadors that talked to us at our last board meeting. And they were very, very good, and they answered all my questions, and they explained. We didn't go into the classrooms with them, but through the whole building, they explained everything to me, and I thought they did an excellent job. I really did. And then Mrs. Gale and I then did go into some classrooms, all the classrooms that we could. I found it very intriguing that the kindergartners were doing math. They had to count out 8 eggs on a sheet, and they had to just draw circles instead of an egg shape. And then they had to subtract 2 from those 8. I thought for kindergartners, that's very interesting. So, and then she and I talked about the new math curriculum and how well it was working and so forth. I saw their VIP wall where the student gets nominated for something that he or she did very well. And so it has the teacher's name, it has what the student did, and then they take a picture. And then they have a bolo and sunglasses if the kids want to wear it for the picture. And it's right there on the front door to the right, excuse me, as you come in. It's really nice. And I saw her data wall that they have where they have the students up there and they have the picture of every student with their card. And she talked about how the picture really helps teachers identify who the student is with not just the name and everything, and I thought that was really good. And I also saw in her office the goals she has set for the school and what they want to reach, where they are right now, and she explained all of that to me. And all of those things I thought were very, very interesting, and it shows that they're very engaged in what it is they are doing. Clean building steward as usual. And the ambassadors really did a great job. Really, they did a really good job when they talked to us at our meeting. But on the tour, I was really impressed with how verbal they were and how they explained everything. So it was a great visit.
Okay. So I was able to go to Eisenhower today, actually, and I was able to sit in on a DARE lesson with Officer Johnson. That was really fun and interesting. I was a little bit shocked when I walked into the classroom because there's just kids everywhere. There was about 40 kids, but it was because they had combined the two fifth grade classrooms, and he, of course, does a phenomenal job and a really good job of engaging everyone. And their lesson today was on communication. So it was really fun. And next week they will have another lesson on communication, but it will be on the nonverbal portion instead of the verbal portion. So that was really fun. I'm actually going to Washington tomorrow, so I'm sorry. I apologize that she, in a later email, told me that you were coming this week, and I said, sorry, we're hitting you both in the same week. But I'm going to be learning about Nebraska tomorrow,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm really excited about that. And then I also, this past month, was able to be in the high school during the Blue and Gold speech meet. And that was a very well-run event from what I could see. I was in the concession stand pretty much the whole time, but had an opportunity to visit with Mr. Spatansky. And one of the things that he said to me that I was really impressed with was that he felt like they have a lot of people here at the high school this year that are lifting and just really helping each other. And so you could definitely, even throughout the speech meet with all of the people that were here helping and doing different things, you can see where, our mission and everything with the canteen spirit already affecting people. And then Mr. Byrne visited with me for a little bit, and he was mentioning that that the number of suspensions this year is way down over prior years. And so I think that's really great. I think there's some great things going on here at the high school. So, and then I've been able to sit in every week on Senator Jacobson's Zoom meetings. So far it's been a lot about his bill with the Bitcoin. And was able also to watch the legislature a little bit this morning, and I just happened to turn it on when they were talking about LB 300, and they adjourned before there was any real action taken on that. So I imagine they'll take it up probably first thing tomorrow morning. Heard a lot from the Lincoln and Omaha senators and their opposition to that bill. So it didn't really seem like there was a lot of support for it, so I'll be surprised if it passes or really goes anywhere. So anyway, that's pretty much it for me.
Anyone else? All right. Board protocol. We had this on our committee of the whole meeting last month, just to kind of review some of the things that are expected of board members and some of our processes and things. And so I just wanted to follow up with that. I had tuned into one of NASB's leadership calls here a couple weeks ago, and it was just kind of like a Q&A session. And one of the frequently discussed items was just how board members handle different potential conflicts of interest and when to abstain from voting and when to abstain from discussion. And there were a lot of questions about that and a lot of really helpful information. And so our policy surrounding that is 2005, which will actually be up for review next month. And so I thought I would just go ahead and follow up kind of our discussion from last month, this month, on a little bit of a review and some of the information that they had shared with me. And so I did take a few notes that I'll share with you guys, and then if you have any questions, Whether or not I know the answer tonight, I don't know, but we'll make sure that we address them when we review that policy next month. So some of the things that we talked about, obviously if a board member has an immediate family member that is employed by the district or that type of situation, that can be kind of a tricky circumstance to know when you are allowed to vote and not to vote. The general consensus and how our policy reads is that if it's something that impacts all district personnel and is not just specific to an individual group of personnel or your family member, you are okay to still vote on that. That is obviously up to someone's discretion. So if you feel like it's a gray area for you, you can abstain from voting. Immediate family would include either a spouse or a child that's still living in your home or somebody that you are claiming on your taxes is how our policy clarifies that. And then they actually did talk a little bit further in the NASB call about how even though you can vote on that when it comes to things like negotiations committees and those types of things, that the recommendation and generally good practice is if you have an immediate family member or somebody that is close to you that is employed by the district, that their recommendation is to not serve on the negotiations team, just so that there's no gray area of anything unfair happening there. So that was one thing that there was a lot of conversation about. Another topic that came up pretty frequently was substitute teachers. There are a lot of school boards that have substitute teachers on their boards. Some of them have so many substitute teachers that if they all abstain from voting, they would not have enough board members to vote on something regarding substitute teacher pay. So that's not a problem that we currently have on our board, but it is something to keep in the back of our mind if any of us at any point were to start substitute teaching and something were to come up on a vote in regards to substitute teacher pay, something in a negotiated agreement, that would be something as a board member we'd need to abstain from. When we do things like travel for trainings and those kinds of things and we receive reimbursements, we always abstain from voting on our own reimbursement pay. And then the last kind of area where a board member might see conflict of interest would be regarding business relationships with the district. So if you or a spouse, or again, technically a child living in your home, owns a business that's directly involved with the district or in any way could benefit financially from a business relationship with the district, then there is disclosure paperwork that we file, and we talked about that in our January meeting. And then sometimes those conflicts might not be as clear. So I just have a personal example of this, that it might not always be an exchange of money that the business would receive, but for instance, my husband owns a business that is currently leasing space in Osgood, and so when those discussions came up about what we were doing with Osgood, it was very important for me to not only abstain from voting, but also to abstain from the discussion of that, because sometimes the discussion piece is just as important as our vote. And so it was really important for me to know that none of you felt like I was trying to sway your opinion in any way, because clearly I would be biased in that situation. And so that was just one example of how we may have a conflict as a board member. And so we discussed a lot of those things. I just wanted to bring that to the board so that as we're reviewing that policy, if there are questions about that, if you are concerned that you may have a conflict with something moving forward, we make sure that we have everything filed and handle that appropriately. Anybody have any questions or anything to add to that? Okay. It's pretty cut and dry if you read the policy. It is kind of lengthy because there are a lot of different situations that are outlined in there, but it's pretty clear. So if anybody does have any questions, make sure you bring those when we go to discuss that one. Okay, public comment. Public questions and comments may take place at this time in the agenda. Individuals who want to address the board must complete a guidelines for public comments form with the date, topic, addressing, name, address, and the name of any organization you represent and give it to the board clerk prior to the meeting. Sheila, do we have
I
any?
have none.
All right. We will move on to the rest of our agenda then. So our first item here is the North Platte High School 2024-2025 building site plan. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Spitansky.
Thanks for coming to NPHS by. And to echo that piece of lift, we've got two of those members of our team that are lifting tonight on our teaching team. As well as Mrs. Allen, one of our associate principals. And it takes a team to do the work. We've got a really strong number. So we're going to take a little bit of time. It won't be a really in-depth piece, but we're going to just outline to you the site plan for North Platte High School. The topics that we'll be covering tonight are listed there. We'll introduce our guiding coalition members. Two of them are here with us tonight. We'll talk about how we arrived at our missions, or our vision statement and our value statements, and then work through our attendance behavior goals as well as the external review team's recommendation as well. So the members of our guiding coalition are listed. We've got representation from a variety of areas of our building. So Amy Albrecht is one of our counselors. Charlene Blackburn represents our special education department. Mr. Brook represents our social sciences group. Mr. Cahill is part of BMIT. Kyle Drake's with our science team. Hartman is with our world languages. Mrs. Kaminsky is part of our math team. Mrs. Snively is one of our English representative. Sweetberg is part of our CT and Ag group, and then we've got Mr. Byrne, Mrs. Allen, and myself. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brook and Mrs. Kaminsky to talk to you about how our guiding coalition has helped us to develop our vision statement, our value statement. We have kept the same mission statement that is at the district level, indicating that we're a destination school district that's going to provide those innovative opportunities and instill the same experience. So I'll turn it over to you guys really quick.
So you can see our vision statement for the high school. North Platte High School will have a culture of inclusion, collaboration, and academic excellence that empowers all students to evolve and to engage resilient and productive citizens. This was, I would say, a lengthy process in a good way of honing in the right wordage and kind of what we wanted to zero in on. We had kind of two processes that mimicked each other. One was for the vision statement, and then one were for the value statements. We started, here, I got some notes. So again, we all met together as within individual departments. And sorry, you can chime in anytime.
Okay.
But
Are you really want me to start talking?
so we met within individual departments, and typically it was a several-week process. And we had a Google document that we would then share with admin when we were all kind of set and done for that week, and they could kind of see what we were doing. And admin would pop around in meetings, and like Mr. Byrne was in the social studies meeting. And so as a department, social studies, math, and so on, we came up with a vision statement.
We kind of researched some different ones that we liked, talked about topics, things that needed to be included, collaboration. We felt it was important for people working together. We want to still encompass academic excellence, including all. So we did kind of go and research lots of different vision statements that we could find, and within a department talked about what was important to us.
And within departments, some departments we went as far as what does AI offer, and we kind of looked into AI, and they had some good wordage and some good ideas that we took from, but kind of just a combination of resources that were available to us. Each department came up with that vision statement that we thought was important, and once that was done, we moved on to the next process where then all of those vision statements then were brought before the guiding coalition. And so as a group, we
kind of drafted what we wanted it to look like.
Narrowed it down.
Yeah.
Some things that we look at each department and we're like, well, we really like this and we really like that. And so it definitely was a piece of each of, that came together as a whole puzzle eventually. And Once that was done with the Guiding Coalition, we then presented it for the staff as a whole. So we had all 70-some teachers down in the library, and we met. And again, even then, it was kind of honed in even more, and some of the wordage was changed. And so it definitely was a building process, which I think was important for a buy-in and to make it important for every teacher that was there and in a way had a hand in coming up with that vision statement.
Lots of working together.
Yep.
The math department would come up with ideas we thought were cool, and then we would rely on the English department to word it correctly and make it sound good.
Yes.
So,
That's
teamwork
collaborative.
makes the dream work.
And so that process then was repeated with our value statements. And our value statements were worded very similarly to what the district's strategic plan is. We chose to go with things that we'll always do. And so they're listed here. And we went through the same process that Mr. Brook and Ms. Kaminsky just talked about. We had it with our Guiding Coalition. We wordsmithed it there, collected it as an admin team. We brought that back to the Guiding Coalition from our collaborative teams, and then we took it in front of our whole staff to reach. We introduced the term consensus at that particular time too, because we really wanted to make sure that everyone had a voice and had a chance to be a part of that decision-making process. And there was a lot of, time spent.
Yeah.
It was probably
We looked for themes
Yeah.
and kind of
Similarities between
summarize
the
the
departments.
themes and the things that were important to each of the different departments and tried to put them together. And again, wordsmith a little bit.
Mhm.
Make it
And
sound
we didn't
like
want it too long, but we didn't want it too short. I was talking not only about the vision statement, but also the value statements. We didn't want them, too lengthy, or something that was concise and to the point, and something that was easy to remember and important, the word you chose.
I remember thinking back, because inclusion was a pretty key word, and we want all kids to be a part of what we're doing. We wanted to really focus on, obviously, academic excellence, but we wanted to have that resilience piece that was in that vision statement as well, so overcoming, and that's something that could then help them to transition to life beyond high school. So
We also
and the
wanted
environment that we
yeah.
wanted to create here, that I felt like that was a big part of what we wanted to incorporate in the values. The kind
And
of
also
environment we wanted to-
one that would complement well the district's mission statement. And I think that was an important piece for us as well.
So the external review provided some information. I think I hit a skip pull up that document real quick here. So blow that up. So our external review sheet said, to focus in on, the school goals about attendance and behavior and that sort of thing. And then it made some recommendations. So we'll talk about the attendance goal and the behavior goal, and Mrs. Allen kind of outlined what she and our counseling team have been working on with their social and emotional piece. But attendance is one of those pieces that has been kind of lacking, and so we've worked hard to try to create the culture and environment in our school that allows kids to want to be here, and that's visible in our vision statement as well as our values. So what we've worked on is we're making sure that every minute of attendance is calculated. We have our staff working tirelessly. Heck, over the snow days, we had our secretaries coming back in, because for 1,200 students, you're not able to always comb through that. So we were playing catch up on some of that, but we were tracking data weekly and really analyzing that piece on attendance, and we're seeing some of those pieces come to fruition. The second piece is more of a student services district level piece that's working throughout all of our buildings, but we're accepting those medical documented notes within a certain time frame as grayed out absences, which is more than reasonable. And so we're seeing both of those things coupled together to help us to work on that. So our behavior goal, we've been working to re-implement with our power cards. Each teacher is given 9 power cards per term, and just asked to give out 1 per week. When our students are receiving that, they'll find out whether it's for practicing safety, ownership, work ethic, empathy, or respect. We're placing them into a spreadsheet, and then they become eligible after they bring that down and picking up, an immediate reward like a candy bar or something of that nature. Then we're going ahead and place them into a spreadsheet, and that's how they get selected to be our power dogs of the month. And so, that has been something that we're trying to focus again on, having more students in our 80% range and fewer kids in our, 15% of the tier 2 and tier 3 behavior.
Can I add something to that?
Go ahead.
Admin has also done a very good job of recognizing through Power Cards staff. And so staff will receive those Power Cards as well. And I think that's great for the culture at our school and the atmosphere at our school is that we are recognized for things that we didn't know, maybe anybody noticed or so. And then those are then, I'd assume, put in to be able to be drawn for or selected as Teacher of the Month. True. So I think that's an important piece of that.
So,
Are you trying to earn your power card?
I'm
just kidding.
I got one for you. Don't start there.
The teachers can give teachers power cards, and admin can give teachers power cards. So it's a way to recognize the good things that we're doing to each other, and then also from admin to staff.
it's just a good way to work together. I mean, that's that we talked about earlier. It's the lift. So, yeah, again, we're collecting data, and we have a spreadsheet that we do weekly with the number of referrals by the freshman class, sophomore class, junior class, senior class, and what we're seeing is pretty exciting with the reduction. We also have a parent celebration committee that we're working with to come in, and so at the end of term 2, we focused on students that were 0 referrals, and they were given ice cream treats. So we worked with the DC to get that donation. At the end of term 3, we're going to run the data on 0 referrals and 2 or fewer unexcused absences. In term 4 will be 0 referrals, 2 or fewer absences, and have passed all of your classes for the term. So we're just really going to try to work on all 3 of those facets.
And the students are paying attention to that. Because if they end up in my office, they're like, oh, does this mean I don't get ice cream? So they're paying attention.
So these are a couple of pictures, if you were to tour around the building, of how we're recognizing some of those students with the Power Dogs as well. And then I'll turn it over to Mrs. Allen. She'll talk to you about the specific role from the external review team, which is she and our counseling team have worked tirelessly on. We actually do that in this room. So I'll let
Yeah. So one of the final recommendations from our external review was that our students needed to transition from junior high to being a high schooler, and there was some little bit of struggle with that. And that was based on feedback that they got from the students when they were interviewing them. And so what we proposed is that we have an SEL, so social emotional learning. We have an SEL Bulldog time for our special education students who are verified as emotionally disturbed, and it's taught by a particular special education teacher. And I was talking to Erica Johnson, and I was like, why can't we do that for more? And she's like, I don't know, that's a great idea. So I put together a list of things that might be beneficial for freshman students to hear and know based on some of the things that we were dealing with on a repeated basis in our offices, and put together a list, shared it, and people gave some feedback. And then I went out and kind of built a little curriculum for it that would be for a term. And then I passed it along, and Amy Albrecht, one of our counselors, took it, and she made it very pretty, and it looks super nice now. And then she also volunteered to kind of pilot it. So we chose some students based on the data that we had about what their success or lack thereof was and how often we were seeing them. And this third term, we implemented it. And so we have an SEL Bulldog time. You want to offer a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. It's nice because I guess to back up, I was in 8th grade for a long time, and now I'm in 9th grade. And the thing is, I've grown up so much. The thing to see is it's hard for some of them to transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. That's, even when I was teaching 8th grade, we had discussions about that way back when. And, some of the kids seem to get lost in the shuffle. It's like they want to be successful. They want to do the things that they need to do, but it's hard for them changing from the environment they were in to the big school up at the high school. And we got a chance to recommend, I guess, some kids who we feel like would really benefit from being in this small Bulldog time class. And one of the gals that I started with at the beginning of the year just struggled in all senses, socially getting along with others, She might have growled at me a couple times. I mean, I don't know. She was just not in a good place, and she's been in this Bulldog time, and she has just flourished. I mean, she's happy. She's bubbly on a daily basis. Not a day goes by when she doesn't pop by to see me, and just something random she has to tell me every day. And it's just, I think that has made such a difference with her. And that's a student where maybe moving on to sophomore year, she wouldn't have found the successes that I assume she's going to find. And now she's, found her niche, found her place, feels comfortable, likes being here. And, that's just a student that's going to be successful down the road, I think, because of a huge part of this program. So
I think we've also seen really good relationships that have come from this between our counselors and our students, where they know that they can trust the adults in this building and have come to us with some really serious issues, and it's enabled us to really make a difference and take actions that are benefiting them, not just at school but in their lives. So it's been a really big win. Right away, we didn't see immediate improvement. One week early on, 3 of them did end up getting suspended, but we came back and it's grown. We're looking forward to trying another group 4th term, and we're hoping that it's successful enough that we can roll it out to all of our 9th grade Bulldog times in the upcoming years and see the benefits going on.
That was part of the external review team's recommendation, and one of the last things I'll just finish off with is we use a term in our office an awful lot. It's really a term of hope. You're born for more than you ever thought possible. And they said they want to see us build upon that. And that's the concept of hope. That's within that. It's within the cultural pieces that we're building. And we're going to see changes in our academics. We're going to see changes in our behaviors. We're going to see changes in our attendance as a result of the culture and climate that we're trying to establish with our kids. So that's our presentation for tonight. You bet.
I saw the word power was capitalized. Does that have a special meaning, or?
Yeah, it means practice safety, ownership, work ethic, empathy, and respect. And you'll see that if you are out in the commons or posted. As you walk in, it's one of the first things that you'll see.
When you fill out one of those power cards, and you hand it to a student, on the back it has the same letters, and then so you circle
Which one?
You circle which one, and then there's a little area for comment about why they're being, I don't know what word I'm looking for. Recognized.
So if you look here, you'll see the recommendation that was on that card is something that we'll place onto that photo. So that kid can walk out there, when they see it, they'll know why they were recognized. They've seen it on the card, but then they've also got that. And then they get to take it home with them too.
Great.
And it goes out on social media, so that their parents get to see that they're being recognized as well.
And
the
it's
smiles,
funny.
the smiles are huge.
It's just
Yeah.
funny because I think sometimes you get to high school and you forget that those little things
Make
are
a big
that still
difference,
matter
yeah.
to these kids. When we give away our 9th grade student of the week, Mr. Green, one of the kids, he said, "Do you want me to laminate this?" And she's like, "Yes, I do." It was so cool. So now we just laminate them every week, and their kids are so proud. I mean, I just think we forget sometimes that the older kids need the little things too. So
And the idea for this came from what they were doing within the freshman pod. So we're just taking these great ideas and spreading them around the world.
Wait, actually, the name Power Dog came from the
Yeah.
freshman too, because they had the student of the month. So then when we had student of the week, they're like, it was a little bit confusing. They're like, what if we called them Power Dogs? I'm like, that's a great idea. So we passed it along, made it happen the next week. So,
A lot of hands in that. So.
and the PBIS team is what came up with the power originally. So it's been in place for quite a few years, and so it's just been growing on it. Yes.
So I have a question. And it's, I guess, kind of a 2-part question. So one part of it is, do you have a plan, or if you don't, I'm sure you will, to continuously keep your mission and vision statement in front of teachers? Because I know that sometimes these things get created, and then as the school year moves on, then it kind of, it's there, but it kind of gets pushed, down the list of things.
So where do you guys see the mission and the value statement? Weekly?
on our Friday Friday Flash.
The Friday Flash, it's there. He always has, right there, he has the vision. And then right below that, or the mission, or the value statement, no.
Vision statement.
Vision
Vision
statement, then the value
statement,
statement.
values.
And so it's always right there, and all teachers are encouraged to read the Friday Flash. And, yeah, so it's there every week, every Friday morning.
And then the second part of the question, and I need to make sure that you understand, even though this may sound negative, it's not meant negative. But do you have a way that you're planning to hold each other accountable for the mission and vision statement and the way that you're acting? And I mean, you have the power cards, but is there anything else that
That's really the intention behind the value statements. Is those are our agreed upon kind of non-negotiables, and it gives us the permission within our collaborative teams and our PLC process. Those are things we're going to live by, right? So we're going to make sure that students start at the center of the decisions that we make. We're going to make sure that we have a trusting, safe environment for students and staff to exist in and learn with. So those are the value statements, and it's going to take a little bit of time through the process of developing out through our PLCs to really gain the courage for each of us to hold each other accountable, and not just, because that's really what it's going to come down to. No matter what the initiative is, it's going to come down to every adult in the building. And we talked about this on day one when we came on. We did an activity in the gym where we linked arms and we held on, right? And so we were talking about, no matter what happens, if you start to lose your grip and you look at the person next to you, lean into them, re-grab, and hold. And if we do that, nothing will break what we're trying to accomplish here. If you notice that someone else is doing that, you have to have the courage to also let them know, I'm here for you, that this is what we do. So it's going to come down to that piece. And that PLC process, I think, is the center of that. So.
And I think what I watched when we were setting, the values, it wasn't just to throw some stuff down on paper and call it good. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth as far as altering and adjusting and being specific towards what we want. So I suppose, that's a starting spot, is just seeing what we all need to be together, kind of our motto, and then it's just moving forward from there.
Well, one of the things Mr. Spatansky said about attendance, that you're trying to create a culture where kids want to be here. That was one of the things when I talked to Mr. Byrne that he mentioned, is that he feels like that's a lot of the reason that the suspensions are down this year, is because he said there's even some of the kids that are some of the harder kids that are like, man, I know I messed up, but I'm so glad to be back, and this is where I want to be. And so I think that says a lot too. So it's really nice to see those changes happen. So I think you guys are doing some pretty great things.
It's a great team.
I had kind of a piggyback, and this might be a Dr. Rose and maybe a Mr. Spatansky question, or just something to think about moving forward. But in looking at those value statements and the topic of just holding each other accountable there, do we see any changes in the future, maybe in how we do evaluations of our strategic plan becoming a part of teacher evaluations, or a discussion piece in evaluations where you go over value statements and where somebody might be strong or need additional support? Is that something
Yeah,
we've talked
I
about?
think that probably not this isn't a great way to say it, but the evaluation of our appraisal system is probably taking the language that we already have in the appraisal and matching it up with
Right.
what we have in our belief statements, or if it's at the building level, within the values. So I think a lot, when I've looked at the building site plans for all 11 buildings and look at vision or mission statements or purpose statements, everybody calls it something a little bit differently, and then they're either values or beliefs or commitments, is that you will see some pretty consistent language across those buildings. So I think there will be a really, really clear correlation between that, really probably with what we already have in our appraisal.
Right, just kind of making
Yeah.
some of those adjustments.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be, when you think about being evaluated as a teacher, there's so much that goes into that, and I know that can be a little nerve-wracking for some staff members. I don't miss those days myself. But, we've decided as a district that this is what's important to us, and you've decided as a building that this is what's important to us. This is what strong educators do in our building. So I would love to see that language match so that we're reaffirming this is what our priorities are, this is what we're looking for, and this is part of what you're being evaluated on. So, yeah, that's
Good
that's
point.
good. Yeah,
That's a good point.
I had never thought to ask that when we were doing strategic planning, but that obviously should trickle down into that.
And I
as
think
well.
there are, and I'm not trying to steal the thunder from NPHS, but, what we do at the district level as it relates to our mission, the new mission statement and our belief statements and those things, those are out in front of us daily, sometimes multiple times. We had ADCO this Wednesday, and we spent a great deal of time on an activity that was bringing together our strategic plan, bringing together building site plans, and we did an activity where principals got together and they took about 30 minutes to come up with what do we see are correlations between what I have in my building site plan and what my building has in that site plan and what we have in the strategic plan to make sure that we're meshed up there, that we have a single vision and a single focus moving forward. So, we're not going to let anybody forget where we're at in terms of this new strategic plan, and we're kind of chomping at the bit to get moving on it and not wait till August. But, the mission statement, for all practical purposes, I had Sheila put in the new mission statement into our agendas moving forward because you did approve our strategic plan. So in essence, you've approved the new mission statement. So we're gonna keep that out in front of people.
I did have one other question. The SEL curriculum that you guys have developed for that Bulldog time, is that something that parents have access to or that we would be able to see? Because I think that sounds like amazing, and I would love to see what you guys are doing. And I also know that I may get some questions about that because sometimes SEL gets a bad rap because other places use that to mean something else. And I think what you're doing with it, I know that our 9th graders probably could use a little help in that department. So I think it would be helpful for us, especially as board members, if we get questions, but even just for parents to be able to see, like, it's not this that you're scared of over here. This is what we're teaching
So right
them.
now, we're piloting with that first group of about
Uh-huh.
18 kids, and we'll work on the next, we'll make a few tweaks, and then we'll have a more, finalized product.
Okay.
We can certainly share it out with anyone, what the common thing is. It's nothing.
Yeah, I think there's the original proposal that I wrote had like the weekly overview, and it's things like using your phone appropriately, social media and its effects, different things like that. And we started with like how to greet people,
Right.
like, because that sometimes is an issue, particularly because of the phones. And we can get that. We can get
Okay.
that out.
I just think that would be great for people to see, because I know sometimes when you say SEL, people's minds go one place. And I know, having taught that age group, I know the things you're talking about, the skills that they just need somebody to teach them how to do this. So, yeah, I think if... Awesome. Anybody else have any other questions? Anything else you guys wanted to share?
Great job. Really good. I like
Thank you.
this a lot. I do.
Thank you.
Thanks for,
Yeah.
I told these guys that they didn't have to stay for the whole time. Thank you guys for being there.
But if you stay, you
Yep.
get a star.
You get power cards.
I have to make sure.
Or I'll disconnect. Here we go.
All right, so up next we have our staffing update with Mr. Mills.
Yes, thank you. North Platte Public School District has had a very good month this month in February. Hopefully you've seen some names come across. We've been very fortunate to hire seven outstanding educators this month, and that goes back to with resignations being down as well. So currently, with those added, we're down to, we're looking at six positions that we need to fill, yeah. And we know a couple of those, at least one, more than likely won't get filled. We have some creative positions behind that adaptive PE, but we have been receiving awesome candidates, and we've made some great hires for the district. Very, very excited. Very excited about this new staff that's coming in. The other piece, completed all college visits except for the University of Wyoming, which I'll go to in another week. That'll be new for North Platte to check out Laramie and to see if we can get any pull from there. And having said that, we just hired someone from Wyoming, so that, again, it may be a good pull for us. So we're going to check that out and see if we can't close up the rest of these positions. Some more applicants.
Mr. Mills, how does where we're sitting at the end of the month of February and having those 6 that we've talked about, how does that compare to past years?
We're way ahead, Dr.
Yeah.
Rhodes. Yeah, that's a great point. Our resignations are down, which we're very happy about. And then hiring has been up because we all know that once that March date sets, nobody's moving anywhere. So we're
And what is that date?
March 15th.
15th.
Yep. So yeah, Dr. Rhodes, the numbers are up with the applications and resignations down. And what I have to say though, these staff that we've been able to grab and hire are just exemplary, high intelligent, wonderful people. I mean, we're just very, very fortunate. It has nothing to do with me. I just grab them and set up the interviews and get them going. But we're very excited about the folks coming in.
So do you have kind of a contingency plan for the 6 that you, just in case those don't all get filled, or?
We do for a couple of them. The others, we have a 5th grade Lincoln job we have to get. Elementary, so we're not too concerned about that. Elementary we can get. And we have middle school science over at Adams that we need to get filled. We have Spanish up here, which we have a little bit of an idea, a little bit of thought on that. And then adaptive PE is the one that more than likely we won't get anybody for that. And Erica Johnson's already has a layered plan put together for that position.
And are we still offering an incentive for
Yeah.
some of those positions?
Yeah, we still do our $2,500 hiring bonus that is paid at the end of the three years. So, good question.
And in terms of the adaptive PE, I'll just kind of step in. We are very fortunate to have had Brian Yonke in that position for years here at North Platte, and he's just a phenomenal teacher and a phenomenal person. But a lot of districts don't have an adaptive PE teacher, so they either bring in PT to work with the PE teacher during the class or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of what Mrs. Johnson, that's the plan she's working on right now for students that have that adaptive PE piece in their IEP documents. So most likely that'll mean that IEPs are going to have to look a little different, and the wording has to be a little bit different. But we just have been very fortunate in this district. A lot of districts don't have adaptive PE teachers, so we'll get that one figured out.
Yep. Questions?
No, good job, Kevin.
By the way, we also have a special education teacher. I still have an offer out to her, and hopefully tomorrow she's coming back to town. We already did one visit with her, so hopefully we can lock her down. That'd be beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, our finance and budget update, Mr. Simpson.
So I have 4 different documents on the agenda for today. Some of them I'm just going to quickly go over just so that you're aware of them. But first of all, the budget development calendar. I just provided that so that you know each and every month what we're supposed to be doing. Especially March 1, we receive our certified state aid, which actually we received today. We'll be going over that a little bit here in a couple other documents that I have so that you understand the state aid part of it. But then you can see some other items. I've been working with our finance software. I was trying to get a few things taken care of before I sent out the budgets for our buildings. But those should be going out here in the next week, and then we should be starting to build our budget internally within our accounting system so that we can come to you here in the future and have that discussion, as well as what Dr. Rhodes mentioned in June, maybe having a preliminary budget discussion before you go into July and August. So that's my first document. And as I go through this large piece, I want to make sure. So I want to talk about, first of all, appropriation, so to speak, or how the state looks at it, our expenditures, and then we're going to hit two revenue items that we deal with for North Platte. First of all, I just really wanted to mention, we look at utility costs, and what Lori Coburn, who's our Director of Facilities, and myself look at utility costs over at least a 4-year span, so we can get an idea of what the average is. Right now, we currently have 23, 24. We're putting in 24, 25 into our database so that we can get a better idea of where our utilities are. But as you can see, normally we're going to be growing by $30,000 for next year on our utilities, which includes electricity and natural gas. Now, I'm going to preface this by Stuart's looking at the utility market and watching natural gas and where that should be going here in the near future, which concerns me most. I've seen some items on CNBC as they talk about where financial markets are moving, so I want to make sure that we address everything appropriately moving forward for the 25-26 school year on that side. But you can get an idea of what we look at so that we know that roughly we're going to be growing our utility budget by at least $30,000 for next year. That's the first, that's our expenditure side. So then on our revenue side, as I mentioned, we received our state aid today that sort of is a certification. Now, we'll talk a little bit more in legislation about where possibly that could go. But right now, this is what we know for sure. Now, last year I went through this document extensively explaining how the TIOSA formula puts items into our state aid formula. I'm going to let you, at night when you're trying to go to bed, you can read this so you can get a better idea. But otherwise, what I'm going to do is just really quickly touch on some items within our state aid document so that you can get an idea. Move forward here. The state aid formula first looks at our enrollment and our total weighted formula students, which includes K-12 and preschool. You can see our cost per pupil, which is now, for this year compared to last year, has grown by only 3% roughly compared to 6% the previous year. You can see, looking at all of our items, our system needs have grown a little bit, about 600,000, but that's based upon student enrollment as well as where our other items are. And then finally, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong column. I'm looking at 24, 25, not 25, 26. Our total formula needs, or our system needs, have grown by 2.7 million. So that's looking positive because we did have additional growth in our special education. But on the flip side, we know that our valuation grew by 6.75%. So then therefore, that comes into play in regards to our overall funding for our formula is that the state is saying that you can go back to your property taxpayer and pick up a chunk of that increase of roughly $2 million. With that, based upon where they had set the state aid formula last year, they now have a foundation aid outside of our resources. So we did have a foundation aid that was inside of our resources, meaning that of the total 6.7 million, a portion of that was pulled out for foundation aid. Well, now they've added an additional item that puts some of the foundation aid outside of our calculations, so helps us overall. But in the end, based upon prior year corrections, our state aid overall will go down by $244,000. So just to keep that in perspective as we look at our overall revenue going forward, when we start talking about where our budget will be. Then you can see where our formula, or where our array of schools, 10 higher and 10 smaller districts are. And looking at last year, we were third from the highest. This last year, as we put procedures into place, we're almost at midpoint for our cost per pupil. So we're doing a lot. I also want to tell you too, is that if you look at the last page, you can see where a lot of districts have lost enrollment for the 25-26 school year. So in that, all of us are facing declining enrollment, but for us, our cost per pupil, we're hitting about midpoint. So please take a look at that. Do you have any questions about that? I went through it quickly, but I felt like since we really delved into it last year that I didn't want to touch on a whole lot other than how the state aid was calculated. And just to let you know that we are trying to control expenses a little bit more, and we're getting that number down where we're more at midpoint. Some of those districts we can't compete with, such as Grand Island or Ralston. You know, some of those districts are just the way they're formulated. The other item, hang on here, we get Spark. The other item that I want to bring up to the board is, and what is going on? We'll just, I'm having trouble.
Charles isn't here. Oh,
And
no.
Charles isn't here. What am I
There
going to
you
do?
go.
There we go. It has bothered me that during our 23-24 fiscal year, our revenue or our overall costs were greater than our revenue coming in. And I've been trying to figure that out, and all of a sudden I got through the end of 24, I had to report our bond payments to our fiscal agent. So when I did that, I was taking a look at where we've received property tax from the county for support of the school district. So when you take a look at this, and let me blow it up. So when you look at calendar year 22, so when we passed the property tax request in September last year, that does not go into effect until January of the 25 school year. So for September, October, November, and December, we're still operating on sort of the 23-24 property tax requests that we did in September of 23. Gets a little bit confusing on dates, but the way the county does it is that when you request property taxes, those go into effect in January of the next fiscal year. So I have a spreadsheet that has taken that into account over the years. So if you can look at 2022, we collected 25.7 million. We had requested 25.8 million, or we were at 99.86%. So if you work your way through that for 23, which was implemented in September of 22-23, we had received 25.3 million. We had requested 27.2. We had not, or the county had not collected 1.9 million of that property tax request. So then all of a sudden, when we hit the 23-24 school year for 24 collections, all of a sudden we collected 26.2 million and we had requested 29.2. So all of a sudden we experienced a drop down to 89.9% collection rate for our property taxes. That's why we went into our reserves in that fiscal year. So really concerned me, wondered what was going on across the state. So I reached out to my business officials and I said, this is what I'm seeing. And I had talked to Dr. Rhodes before I did this. I received from 2 school districts saying we're at the same point. We're roughly at about 90% collection rate. So it sort of prompted me to say, oh, okay, we're somewhat similar to other school districts across the state. And then I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Rhodes because he received some text messages from superintendents.
Yeah, so we have a group, it's kind of most of Panhandle, west into the Panhandle from North Platte. So we have group texts on a lot of different things, weather, for instance. It was a pretty interesting chat last week. But the topic came up, and it's not unique to Lincoln County by any stretch. Everybody is experiencing a lower percentage of reimbursement in terms of tax collections. So, does that have to do with this drastically large increase in valuations? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I know we kind of are in the crosshairs because we've asked for more tax dollars. But remember that the formula has kind of necessitated that because the local effort rate is so high for us anytime those evaluations jump up, and then over the course of 3 or 4 years we're down $1.5 million or so in state aid. So I don't know, but it's a phenomenon across the state right now. I believe they are experiencing it on the eastern end of the state too. Might be generational, I don't know. Nebraskans have been notorious for paying taxes. Nebraska, above any other state, generally pays all their taxes. And it usually is anywhere from 97 to 99% reimbursement on those tax collections. So none of us really know the reason why it's happening. But when you think about that, and I would just mention this, because we've talked as a group before about cash flow, and you've seen the chart, the dips in the chart. And so, if you have $3.5 million that is still out there that hasn't been collected over the past 3 years, think what that would do to your cash flow. Then you don't need to go and grab an operating loan from the bank, because that is in essence your cash reserve right there. So we'll continue to monitor that really, really closely. Now, when you look at our tax statement, it does have back taxes on it as well. It's pretty lengthy to read through, but it'll have 22 taxes on it. It's usually kind of nickels and dimes that kind of come through. But you can get on Lincoln County's website and see they're going to have their auction coming up on unpaid tax properties. There's some pretty large numbers in there.
Right.
Yeah, it's anywhere from businesses, obviously, to residential as well, but there's quite and I think that was from 23, Stuart?
What, yeah, I
think
so.
23,
I'd
wow,
double check.
yeah.
But
So-
then,
The
along with
bullets
that,
were
we
just
also.
Did they do an article on it?
Well, they're all just printed and published, and
Yeah.
my husband and I had actually noted that we had never noticed that list being.
That length, I think it's
That
17
long.
17
Pages and
pages.
pages.
Yeah,
I never
I mean,
noticed
it
a
was.
list, ever. Because I was like, what?
Yeah, 17
Yes.
My
pages.
age here.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, that's always a good thing to look for.
Just
But
to
yeah,
make sure.
they publish that every year, but I will agree with you. I was amazed because it kept going on and on
Right.
and on and on.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if those get paid, which at some point surely they have to, we see that money down the
Correct.
road,
Yep.
correct? And it doesn't come out of anything we've requested in the future. It's just like
No.
back paid on what
Right,
we're
it's
owed.
back
Is that
paid
right?
taxes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Like Dr. Rhodes mentioned, on my spreadsheet, I look at current taxes and then everything else that comes in from the previous time. Because
Mhm.
county does give that to us so that we know if we're getting a lot in back taxes or not. Along with what he said in regards to Lincoln County, probably a couple of weeks or a week after we were talking about where we were on tax collections and his text message, I was reading the Lincoln Journal, and all of a sudden they were experiencing the same way, as where they're sending out more delinquent letters to people too. So, as Dr. Wood mentioned, it is not unique to Lincoln County. They are seeing it across the state. So, just additional information. So, any questions about this? We're just trying to build
that was very
I'm just
good.
trying to build that foundation on budget as well as finances. So as we go into it, you've gotten little pieces so that you can put together the whole big picture.
I did have a quick question. I'm backing up a little bit, so I apologize for this. When we saw our array of schools and kind of where we fall there, cost per pupil, you had mentioned there's a couple of those, Ralston and Grand Island, for instance, that are like quite a lot lower than the rest of them, and mentioned not really being able to compete with them. Is there a reason that their cost per pupil is so much lower than some of the other schools in our array? I mean, is there a cause for that? Is there something they're doing? Is it the way their buildings are? What's the...
I think on some of them, I'm going to say this, that they're seeing a little bit of an increase in student enrollment, which then because when you set your budget based upon a current enrollment, and then if you see a little bit of an increase, then all of a sudden that takes that cost per pupil down.
Right.
I think the other piece that Dr. Rhodes was doing a study on is that some of the districts, and I'll just use Ralston because they're close in enrollment size to us, they have fewer buildings, which then all of a sudden consolidates a lot of costs, which then helps control growth there.
Sure.
So, and in comparison to, West Side, which, you would think has a lower cost per pupil because it's in the metro area, but their district has always voted on a levy override, so they're always spending, and they're going to be always at the bottom because of how they are.
Sure.
So,
I think typically Grand Island, just with their 10,000 students, typically, I mean, they've always had a very, very low cost per pupil. So I guess I think a good talking point for maybe our public is when you look at the two documents right above that last page there, when you look at the cost per pupil that we had as a district last year versus where we're at, and that we have reduced our cost per pupil, and that is a function of this board and challenging us with our budget, certainly. But in this day and age, you don't see a lot of districts trending that way. Most districts are trending that their cost per pupil is rising, and we've done some things with efficiency to lower that a little bit. And I'm working on a spreadsheet that has some comparable data as it relates to some of these array schools, and one that I've really honed in is Ralston, for instance. So I've got a spreadsheet that shows every building that those districts have, and if it's programming, some programs are really, really expensive, so if they have a unique program. But in comparison to, the Norfolks of the world, the Columbuses of the world, the Ralstons of the world, you have to remember we have 7 elementaries, and a lot of those have 5. Now they're bigger elementaries, obviously. They're 3 and 4 track elementaries, but when you're talking about the operation of just a building itself, that's $1 million in just an operation of that building generally, and then you have some redundancies in those buildings as well, just because of need of human capital in them as well. And so it's the system that we have, and this community and our school district has always had a lot of elementaries. I mean, you used to have a lot more.
Yes.
So that's something that we actually visit a lot about at the cabinet level is the elementary enrollment and kind of where we're at right now. And I don't have a problem saying this publicly. If we weren't on the cusp of this economic development, I would be silly not to recommend to the board to close one of our elementaries. It would just, I've already got data that supports where which buildings could be closed and where kids would go to school. That's hard on families, I understand that, but we can't do that at this point. We just don't know what's going to happen with these businesses coming to our community and sustainable beef and those things. So, but it's good for me to collect that data and keep that kind of that spreadsheet so I can continue to visit and look at it. And Mr. Mills and I, we study enrollment every morning. We've got a spreadsheet. We're looking at elementary enrollment every morning. So.
And then along with that, if you go to the one spreadsheet, it shows a comparison of cost per pupil as well as enrollment. And right away you can see some of the districts, like we were talking about on Ralston, increase students. Well, when you increase students, that cost per pupil goes down. And you see the black to the red immediately. I always look at Waverly only because my daughter's there, and I look what they're doing. But they decrease students, but increase costs. So it's a flip side there. So anyway, you can take a look at those numbers and just walk through it. Any other questions? I'll try to get this out of this one as we move on.
Good information, Stuart. Really
Thank you.
good.
So
Yeah,
when we're
thank you.
doing the
That's
budget,
really-
sorry. So when we're doing the budget, and we're looking at the history of the property tax collection, are we putting what we requested into our budget, or are we looking at the past and noticing that the collection is lower, so what we're gonna get is gonna be lower, and
Well,
not putting it in the budget? Does that make
The way,
sense?
yeah, I understand what you're saying, Angela. I think when we look at the budget, we know that 60% of our budget is covered by property taxes. So when we're putting together our expenditures, and as we went through the process last year of trying to come up with a sort of a 8.2 type of item, I look at the expenditures first, look at where all of our other revenue will be, and then property taxes lay into there accordingly. So I try to put together what we want to do for the budget and then pull in the revenue accordingly. I don't take into account where it's been collected in the past, because I know that's still outstanding at the county and it'll come in slowly. So we may cross our fingers, hopefully in the next year or two with sales, maybe get additional revenue coming in on property taxes, and that's just what will show overall on revenue for property taxes, but it'll have no bearing on where the board will set property taxes for the next year, because it's based upon the current expenditures that you want and then how you're going to fund it. Any other
I think that-
questions?
So the budget document that Mr. Simpson puts all that data into, that has to be uploaded to NDE. It's got to be uploaded to the state assessors, not assessor, the
Auditor.
state public audits, and the third one it goes
County.
to is the county. So on that document, where it's calculated in terms of its prior year taxes is what it is, and it's the line item is monies that are still at the county level. But it doesn't go back 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years.
Right.
But yes, so when we're building the budget, the cash on hand is what we actually consider what's left at the county as cash on hand as well. So that's always the number that starts our budget. That's the beginning balance is the best way to put it. So yes, it's always calculated in as if we have that money, is how it's calculated in.
Other questions? Thank you. Good enough.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
I might be misunderstanding that. So we're saying that the money that we haven't, that the county has not collected is actually cash on hand for us, even though we don't have it?
From the prior year, yes. That's the way the budget document works.
But it's not
Why?
actually cash on hand, it's actually sitting,
No.
hopefully at some point in time, sitting in. the
But
county.
it's considered beginning
So we're-
balance.
But we're saying a beginning balance is a wish, is a hope.
Yeah, because the combination of your beginning balance is actually what you have in the bank and then what's left at the county. I know, but that's, I understand what
No,
you're
I
saying.
mean, I just want you to make it make sense.
Well,
I'm not being
the
negative.
reason
Just- yeah.
they
You're
do it
just trying
that
to-
way
yeah.
is typically you will get taxes that come in later.
Okay.
And remember that the tax season is a January 1 through December 31st. And so what they're saying is you've got the next 6 months to collect the taxes from 2024. So that's what we build in because people haven't paid their second set of
Right.
taxes a lot of times.
And you don't want it to show as revenue on the incorrect year.
Correct.
When it's
So you want
Right.
to show it on-
coming in as
Yeah.
a past,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense than I think. Sorry.
Thanks for thoroughly confusing us.
Well,
Sorry about that.
you know, my accounting brain is where it should be, right?
It's on overdrive.
Yeah. It's on overdrive, I like that.
Okay, moving on. If does anybody else have any questions? There was a lot there, so. Okay. Mr. Simpson with our banking service RFP update.
So I just wanted to let you know that we mailed out our RFPs on January 31st, but due to however the mail is working here in North Platte, a lot of our, we'll just put it at that. We received a call a week later from one of our financial institutions saying, we just received it, and we were expecting them to submit it to us on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And we were like, really? So we made a few calls to some other financial institutions, and they had not even seen it yet. So Janelle and I quickly got on the phone and then got a hold of each financial institution, told them the situation, asked for an email, and then emailed the document to them, and then extended that RFP process to February 26th. In that, we've received 3 institutions bidding on it. We did receive some emails from other institutions saying they didn't want to bid on the process. So we have 3. We have a panel of 7 that will be reviewing that. I have now emailed it out to them with the rubric. They have till Tuesday evening to complete that rubric, get it back to me for each individual financial institution. I'll put it into then a spreadsheet, get an average, and then we'll come up with our recommendations for a financial institution. But this is based upon that, every 5 years you want to take a look at whether it's financial institutions audits or insurance on the district, and making sure that everything is working correctly. So this is just one step in a myriad of other items that will take place over the course of the next year.
I did have a question on that just in our review process. Obviously, that'll be brought back to the board with that recommendation. And I have not had a chance to look at those documents yet. So this question may already be answered and I just don't realize that. But is there a way that we are evaluating these financial institutions, not just in the banking services that they're going to provide to us, but maybe in some of the less concrete things that they do for our district? Because I know that we do have several banking institutions in our community that make large contributions or that volunteer or that really are big partners to the school. Is that
Yeah.
something that
Yeah,
we
there's
have
2
that-
items within the rubric
Okay.
that address what do you do for the community,
Okay.
and then what do you do for the school district, so
Sure.
that you can, the people that are on that can rate accordingly of what they're doing for that, and that should be part of in their RFP of what they are doing, or
Okay.
you should be able to see it in some capacity.
Okay.
Besides all the other items that come into play for the financial institutions for North Platte.
Great. Yeah, that's perfect. That was just something I was
Yep.
thinking about today that isn't I mean, obviously the numbers all have to make sense, but that there is more to that relationship oftentimes.
Right,
than that.
and we want to make sure, number one, the services that they're providing are appropriate, as well as what are they going to give us in return. I mean, we're paying them as Dr. Rhodes mentioned on a line of credit, what we're doing there, but what are they going to give us as we have money in the bank? What's going to happen?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
Any other questions about our bidding on financial institutions? Okay.
All right. Legislative update.
I'll go. I'll just talk about a few items. Number one, today is day 34. That's about a little bit more than a third of the way through. So, and then they're going to be in session tomorrow. Some items that I look at compared to what Dr. Rhodes and Skip looks at is first of all, we have 3 shell bills out there. 680 and 681, which are in education, and 713, which is in retirement. Nothing has happened on them, but it makes us very nervous because, as Dr. Rhodes has mentioned, or as Skip has mentioned in other meetings, is that we could see something like last year where all of a sudden those shell becomes Christmas tree bills, and we take a myriad of items that were not either voted on or couldn't get it out of committee and thrown in to maybe make, we'll just say, this whole group right here happy that they could then get through the legislature. So it's a big concern for us as we look at the shell bills. One item, Joanne mentioned about LB 300, and it went through about 2 hours of debate and nothing happened. Dr. Rhodes and I got an email from Mike Delaney, who's with NCSA, in regards to 300, and I'm just going to read what he wrote because it makes it a little bit simpler. The legislature took up debate of LB 300 this morning. It was very nice to see the number of senators who rose to speak on Mike and oppose the measure. Senator Jetta Hughes was prominent for the opposition, as were Senator Brandt, Van Gilleren, Kuchera, Spivey, Rippey, and Dugan, among others. No vote was taken. The debate lasted for about 2 hours. We're now told the Speaker does not plan to return the measure for any further debate. This could change if, for example, the measure is prioritized. However, given the lopsided debate today, this seems unlikely, meaning, and when he says if it's prioritized, it could come back into that shell bill, which makes us very concerned. So, but I wanted to at least let you know what Mike had told us in the process. Many other items that are out there, and one big one is LB 303. I talked to you about our state aid, but 303 is a variation on the TIOSA formula. It was heard in the Education Committee, but nothing else has come out, so we don't know where it's going to be. But the whole education community, as well as school boards and the NSEA, have all supported Hughes's bill, but nothing has happened yet at this point in time. So we'll see where it is. And as obviously we have less than 60 days to go, so we still have a lot of time left. We're watching 572, which is student teacher pay, but the hearing is coming Monday. We'll watch that one. And then the retirement bill, Dr. Rhodes and I have been watching 645, and that's hearing on 314. So we're looking at those 2 bills. Big thing that I've also watched is appropriations. LB 261 and 264 will be heard at the Appropriations Committee. But the Appropriations Committee will take that up from May 8th to May 27th, based upon their priority and what's going on. So I have some detail on that one, but I'm not going to read it because of time. But it's interesting. I've been reading it, as well as Open Sky had some information on it. Tomorrow, Forecasting Board meets, sets the revenue for the next direction. There should be one again in April before the Appropriations Committee meets. So we're going to be watching a couple of meetings going on before we fully set where the budget's going to be. And then finally, this has just been my mantra, LB 171, is income tax structure. And as Angela was asking about property taxes, this is income taxes at the state level and how that's going to fund the legislature? Because we're still seeing about a $250 million deficit. So how are they going to fund that in some capacity? Legislature in a minute.
Well, not as big as that has been in the past, though, some of it.
No.
Mainly, a lot of it this week were hearings in the Education Committee. Like 17 bills through the course of the week were heard in the Education Committee. And in some of them, they're just not, you don't have a sense of where they're going to go at all. Specifically with the chairman that we have, but I'll leave it there. But what happens is we have to see how they're going to vote and if they will send it out onto the floor. And then again later, if it doesn't go through, specifically with the chairman and some of his bills, if he will try to drag him in at the end. So a lot is going to come to play in the next 2 weeks. Really is, which ones they're going to pass through the legislative committee and so forth. My Zoom meeting on Monday was just mainly talking about the hearings and what was going to happen. And of course, I'll have another one Monday, every Monday, 10 to about 11:30. So that's where it stands right now as far as we're looking at. And we also look at the appropriations ones because of the effect of schools too, Stuart, yeah.
I think the only thing I would mention, I think there's 7 related education bills that are in general file right now. There's a couple that have made it to select. One is on final, and they have passed one, and that was, it was an entity bond bill, so it affects all public entities. But in particular, I watched that LB 31 hearing on school surveillance pretty closely, and then there was an amendment that was thrown to that. That did come out of committee, but it's a poorly written bill overall. They did have several hours of debate on it, and it never came back to the floor, and it never met cloture, and it was never voted on. My assumption is Speaker Arch has decided that they weren't going to have the votes to pass it, so he's not going to put it back on the agenda. LB 140 has made it to general file. That's student electronic devices. I am of the opinion that that's going to go through. I think it will pass. Just so the board knows, we are working with the secondary principals to develop what that's going to look like, particularly at the 612 buildings on electronic devices. So we're working on our plan and what it's going to look like based on what the current bill reads. And then though, Skip had mentioned the education hearings are always Monday and Tuesday of every week. So yeah, there was a lot of them. So LB 303 has gone through hearing. LB 691 is Senator Merman's 10 Commandment bill. LB 122 is a Myers bill, and that is to post the state and national motto in every grade school classroom, and then I believe in a conspicuous place in secondary buildings. LB 549 is a Lippincott bill, and that's that public schools would be able to employ a chaplain. LB 426 is a Lawanowski bill, and that is American flag program. It's very curricular in nature. But the issue with that is that he's wanting a 5x8 flag in every classroom.
Yeah.
And
give to every
give it to every
student.
student.
yeah, I mean, that's
Because I have 2.
5x8.
huge
Basically
cost.
every
I mean,
fifth
that's probably
grade
about
student.
what size
Yeah.
that
Yes.
flag is right
Yeah.
there.
5x8.
LB 213 is to include human embryology into the science standards. LB 557 is an option enrollment bill that really deals with special education, and then LB 633 is a Hansen bill, and it also kind of modifies the option enrollment statute it's kind of a workaround, in my opinion, of vouchers. So those have been heard. They haven't been voted on yet in terms of committee-wise, so we'll see what's going to happen. As Mr. Simpson said, my big fear, and I've talked to some of you individually about the K-12 suspension that ended up being embedded into one of these Christmas tree bills. And so now you get the vote swapping that happens on the floor. And these big holding bills that they have, these shell bills, I worry that some of these bills that are being heard will not get voted out of committee, but they will negotiate to have them put into a shell bill because they have enough votes to get them through. And unfortunately, you get some really good things that come out of a bill like that, but then you get some really, really bad legislation that goes through as well. So I'm in pretty constant communication with Senator Jacobson when some of these bills come up, and we'll just continue to advocate, as often as we need to. So they are moving, though.
Yes.
That legislature's they're moving a lot of bills through. It's a lot different than it's been the last
Yeah,
couple years.
That's why I made that statement,
Yeah.
yes.
Hard to keep up with them.
All right. Any questions or anybody else have anything else to add there?
You can watch it every day on Channel 11. If you're Vallow, yeah. So, they open at 9, but it'll be 9:20 till they do anything. Because they kind of come in slowly. So.
All right. And now for our policy review portion of tonight's meeting. So we are tonight just reviewing the 1000 series of our board policies. So there are not very many there. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review them. I did not hear from anyone about having significant changes other than being in agreement with your recommendations, Dr. Rhodes. So I will let you share on what your recommendations
So I
are.
did, and I'll do this for every series. I just put a packet together of what could be potential changes to these policies. I went back when we had gone through the 1000 series in 23, and actually we had talked in 23 about moving those last 3 policies from the thousands to the 4000s. And so there's a recommendation or some potential to renumber those. They really should go in with the employee series of policies, which is 4000. So as I perused kind of what I had come up with, obviously I had put a review date of tonight on these documents. I did not see anything with policy 1001. I didn't know if anybody had noticed anything or had any input on that.
I read through them but they were pretty generic.
And
Yeah.
so the interesting part about 1000-002 is when we went back and reviewed and revised this in 2023, the change that we had made was to put at minimum 1 policy series will be reviewed annually. Now, we actually have met that policy because we did have 1 policy that was reviewed at the beginning of 24. So, but that's because of the length it took to do it. But if the board's direction is to every odd number year that we're just going to go through every series, I don't think you want that language in there anymore that you're going to review a series a year. So I just had put the language, the board shall review all policies every odd numbered year, and then struck through the rest. And then, of course, the other change was reviewed on February 27th, and then a revised date on March 10th when we would have approval.
When you get to 103, I'll tell you what I just told you.
Okay, 103 is mission statement, so.
When I read that and I went through these twice, I thought, I hope we are changing the mission statement. Because we just went through this whole strategic plan where
Yes.
you guys were involved.
Right.
That was going to be my first question.
Yeah.
And here it is.
So maybe I should go back. Was there anything else on 1002 that anybody noticed that you would recommend that we take a look at or change?
I don't think so. I think it's good that I think this is why we should do this every odd numbered year.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, because there are things that, like, it's pointless for us to have policies if we don't know what's in our policies and if we're not abiding by those policies. And so for us to be continually reviewing and knowing what's in them and making sure, are we doing that? Maybe not that the policy needs changed, but it's like, ooh, we barely did that last year. You know, just making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to that, but keeping them updated with the reality of what is happening in our district, I think would be, yeah. I think that just proves our point right there. That
Absolutely.
That's a good
I agree.
change.
And before you go any further, on policy 01, the first three, I had a couple people stop me at Walmart, which is always fun, about our weather issue last week. And I wasn't gonna bring it up because it's not in the 100 or the 1000s, but where it says informing the public of the matter of the board and district will conduct its business, I think it would have been great, and I think parents looked at the policy for us to post or email saying we were having school on Thursday.
Oh,
Because
Since we
according
weren't
to
technically following
a
that
screenshot
policy.
that kept getting shared to people, we have a winter policy, even though it's not in our policy, about the freezing temps and the winter weather. So parents were assuming we were going to be closed on Thursday since it was the coldest day. And then they were getting sitters, and then they were messaging me saying, hey, are we having school? And I was like, looks like it, yes. But this policy states, and so I looked at the school website, I
Right.
looked on the school Facebook page, and if it would have just said, hey, tomorrow we're having school, that would have been wonderful.
Right.
Because it was just
yeah, no,
confusion
good point.
publicly.
Yeah.
And of course, somebody did bring to my attention, well, it is in its policies that you will inform us. So,
Yeah, you know, what's interesting about that is that the visual that was put together was from 2023.
oh wow.
And so they actually had changed the language. What was it, Mr. Peterson? Extreme cold.
Yeah, instead of.
I
It-
did notice instead of a
They didn't have the.
chill advisory.
Yeah, they used to have
it's
2 layers to it, and then they changed it to this one. And so what we did in 23, we said, is if we were going to be in that type of a warning the entire day, it was an automatic cancellation. And so I guess the decision that I made was that on Tuesday and Wednesday, we were in that warning all day. That warning was lifted on Thursday at about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. And so we've got to redo that procedure. It's a procedure, it's not a policy.
Well, and I'm not upset with the decision, I'm not disagreeing with your decision at all, just let people know.
Communication, yeah.
Yeah, because we had people who were like,
Sometimes,
well, do I need to watch my kids? Do I not?
sometimes I worry that when we send out that messaging, I think sometimes I worry that families see, oh, it's a message, I got a message on Tuesday, I got a message on Wednesday, I'm not having school, and they don't even read it.
Right.
So that's what I kind of worry about that too, that, you know, are you actually going to read the message or not? But yeah, we'll make sure that we do
Or at
better with
least
that.
let me know so that I can tell people. Yes, correct.
They're having school.
I have no idea. Wait.
Way to
look
volunteer,
at-
Angela.
Watch Channel 3 at 6:30 in the morning. That's what I use.
I think
Yeah, go ahead.
that's a good thing to note with this policy, though, is that it does note that these are not the only guidelines,
Right.
and that there are instances where there might be a reason that something needs to be changed or adjusted on the fly. And so I think that's great that we have this in this policy, but maybe as we're moving forward with our policy review, there may need to be layers of that built into some of our
Some
other
other
policies that
policy.
are like, this is what we do, except in these
Except when.
circumstances.
Yeah.
This person
Well, and
has the
you
authority to do
have a
something
school
else.
closing policy as well, so we
Yes.
can, maybe, let's take a look at that when we get to that policy, and maybe we do put some different language in that.
Well, and I think, I just thought it kind of fit with that 1001, just because it was, being transparent, just
Right.
communicate it out.
Right, yep,
No matter what the change is,
you bet.
the emergency, because everything does come down to your discretion.
Yep.
So,
Any other comments, 1001 1001, 1002, or 1003? Okay, now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we had actually talked, I think, with the initial committee who was reviewing these and then bringing these to the board in '24 about moving these to the 4,000. So the evaluation of principals, if you look on the back, the last page, I should say, has Appendix A, and we had not had that attached. So we utilize the Nebraska teacher and principal frameworks. And so I've got that printed for you. That will, and Sheila, don't let me forget to do that, we will upload that in as one policy then. That will follow as the appendix to that. And then we did have several 4,000 placeholders. And so I tried to put them maybe where we had other evaluation or appraisal pieces in, or it didn't always work out that way. So my recommendation would be to renumber that and put it in the 4,000s, and the actual number would be for 4035. Questions, comments on that policy?
The only thing I thought of on here was, and just because I know we have to have it somewhere, so I didn't know how it related to this, but, so we've got that appendix attached there. Is there, I know somewhere we have to have the information about like salaries and those kinds of things for our administrators. Should that somehow be linked in conjunction with this, so it's all kind of grouped together in one place, or is that somewhere else on our website, or what?
Well, so we're public employees, so yes, our salaries can always be looked at. We don't necessarily post those salaries anywhere, but if somebody were to ask for them, we would give them to the person.
Okay. And I think they're available. Doesn't the state have a place?
Yes,
there
yeah, you can
where
go to
find those
NDE.
things?
I think you can probably go to the state public auditor, public auditor as well.
Okay. For some reason, I was thinking we had a document that was already out there somewhere, and so I just thought.
Mr.
that
Simpson,
everything
do you
made
know
sense
if
together,
there's?
but I might be remembering.
We always
that
get it
wrong.
from Mike Delaney in regards to the detail of the staff members, but I'm not quite sure if.
But that's all administrator
That's all
Right,
salaries
that's-
across the state.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
That's,
The Dean of Students, 4036 would be the recommendation. Justin and I visited a little bit this morning about deans of students. We kind of re-implemented the deans a few years ago. Currently where we're at is we have 3 deans in the district. We have one at Jefferson, one dean at Lincoln, and then one at Madison. And second semester, what we've tried to do the last couple of years is to share those people with another elementary building so that we're providing a little bit more assistance across the district. And then the other piece of that is we're trying to grow our own with that pool as well to be future administrators in the district. So I think exposure to a different building leader is good a lot of times, and different leadership styles and those different types of things. So we've had this policy for quite a while. We had deans of students when I came in the district 20 years ago. We didn't have a couple of assistants. Adams Middle School never had an assistant principal. It was a principal and a dean of students. So questions around policy, what is currently policy 1013? Okay. And then attending professional growth meetings. This actually is specific to administrators. We also have a professional growth policy in the 4000s that is for certificated staff, for teachers. And so this actually would be a policy that would be, I think 4034 is actually the professional growth for teachers. And so 433 would be a good placement for our attending professional growth meetings.
So when we vote on this in our next meeting, will we vote to move those out to the 4000s and then turn around and vote in the ones that are left in the thousands?
If we just reviewed and we didn't change anything, the two policies, the 1001, you won't vote on that because we didn't do
Okay, so we'll
any
do it
changes
separately.
to. Yes, 1002 will be voted on,
Okay.
1003 will be voted on, and then we'll
Yeah.
probably have one one motion for all three of these to move them to
Okay.
the
All
4,000
right.
series.
Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, everybody.
Okay, any other questions or comments about policy review? All right, at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call?
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Buckley.
Aye.
Angela Lacy. Justin Thompson.
Aye.
Joanne Lindsay.
Aye.
Emily Garrett.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.